What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Thursday, July 24th edition of the Ship My Money Show. I'm your host, Adam Scherer. You can follow me on Twitter at ShipMyMoney DFS. Only 4 MLB games tonight, but going to go through game by game as usual, talking about how I'd be approaching the slate for large field DraftKings tournaments if the slate started right now, talking about matchups, talking about everything relevant to these games, using the Run the Sims projections that you see on the screen. These are available for you to use as well. Link is in the description below. 2 subscription options there. Full MLB projections package, $100 a month, gets you full access to the projections you see on the screen. You can download them, upload them into whatever optimizer or sim product you use them for sports betting if you want to do that. You're getting the results of every stat category from our in-house play-by-play sims. If you don't need the full projections package, we do also have the $10 a month MLB Draft Caddy option that simply overlays the DraftKings projections directly onto your DraftKings lineups page. So when you're building by hand, adjusting your lineups throughout the night, whatever it may be, you have those projections right in front of you. That is also included in the full projections package as well. Use promo code UDAMLB, get 10% off of MLB projections. Link is, again, in the description below. Now, getting into it, again, if you have questions, throw them in chat. I will touch on those as I see them. Going to try and be pretty quick in this one. I am playing the Guardians-Orioles showdown slate that starts in about an hour. Still need to completely get started on that. Haven't even looked at it yet. So going to try and get through this one as quickly as I can, but only 4 games, so it shouldn't be too difficult. Not a lot of good pitching on this one either. Weather does look fine, at least right now. Obviously, keep an eye on that throughout the day, but right now it doesn't look like we have anything that is too significant of a weather concern. Toronto and Detroit looks like it's probably the most likely to potentially cause an issue, but looks okay right now. And starting with that Toronto and Detroit game, we have Eric Lauer on the mound for the Jays, Reese Olson going for the Tigers. Difficult matchup for both of these guys. We have seen some strikeout upside from Lauer so far this season. 42 1/3 innings pitched. He has struck out 27.5% of the hitters that he has faced. That is actually the highest mark on the slate, edging out Sonny Gray. Stuff plus grade has been below average, but his command has been very good. 42 innings, not a ton, but it is enough that we can start to at least pay a little bit of attention to that elevated strikeout rate from Lauer. Again, doesn't have a great matchup here against the Tigers, but there's not a lot to like in the way of pitching on this slate. Right now, we have Lauer projected for about 13.5 DraftKings points. That makes him the 3rd highest projected pitcher on the slate behind Kikuchi and Gray. So there's only so much you can do at pitcher today. Having a tough matchup is certainly not enough to just not roster somebody. And he is projected for considerably less ownership than those top 2 guys. Kikuchi likely to come in between 45 and 50% ownership. Sonny Gray likely to come in around 40% ownership or so. I think you're going to get ownership coming into Severino for the A's at a very cheap price tag from a value standpoint. So I think it's likely you get somewhere in the 20% range coming into Eric Lauer. If the slate started right now, I would have around 40-45%. Not because I'm super confident in him, just because I'm not really confident in any pitching on this slate. And he is at least projected to be relatively low owned in the context of a 4-game slate. He does have strikeout upside. You do have the lefty-lefty matchup against some of the better hitters in the Tigers lineup. We don't know what that lineup will be yet, but we do know that their power hitting outfielders, Riley Green, Kerry Carpenter, are left-handed. You will not have the platoon advantage against Torkelson, and it will probably be a predominantly right-handed lineup. But I do, not mind lefties against the Tigers because you do get at least the platoon advantage against Riley Green. So far this season, he has only struck lefties out 18% of the time in a limited sample. Hasn't given up much production, but what really does stand out is that 707 pitches thrown to righties this year. Only a 280 expected WOBA allowed, 30.8% strikeout percentage for Lauer. So he has shown the ability to get righties out so far this season. He's thrown his 4-seam fastball about 47% of the time. He's thrown his cutter about 19%, curveball about 15%. Not getting a ton of swinging strikes. 14% on the cutter is relatively high. Only 9% on the curveball. But again, so far it has resulted in strikeouts. He has been able to locate really well. So I don't think he's, a 30% strikeout guy going forward, but he has at least shown the ability to get some weak contact against righties, to get strikeouts against them so far. And on this slate, I think there's certainly enough talent there to be interested in Lauer. On the other side, very difficult strikeout matchup for Reese Olson. He's projected for about 17% ownership at $8,100. I'm not getting to him right now. And I think the reason really is just the big gap that you see on the screen in projection between Lauer and Olson. If they're likely to be similarly owned and they're similarly priced, I'm probably just going to get to more Lauer, hope that side wins out, hope that I have an advantage there. Again, it's not something I feel super confident in, but it is a tough strikeout spot against the Blue Jays. They are the most difficult team to strike out in baseball. Olson is a solid pitcher, 23.5% strikeout percentage this year, league average command, slightly below average stuff. But again, it's just not an easy matchup for Lauer, but he does project for more strikeouts in this spot than Olson does. You can see here we have Lauer favored by a little over a strikeout and projected to face similar number of hitters here, but we have the higher projection on Lauer. So if that holds, it's just likely that I take a bit of a stand here on Eric Lauer, and it costs me a little bit of Reese Olson in that price range. But that's also one of these things that is specific to me. I don't think it's horrible to play Reese Olson or anything like that, but I do hate the matchup against the Jays. They are a very difficult team to strike out against right-handed pitching so far this season. The Blue Jays rank 9th in WRC+, so we're seeing that number come up lately. They are still dead last in strikeout percentage at 17.2%. So I do prefer Lauer out of the two. And it is likely that I take a bit of a stand there. Against left-handed pitching since the start of last season, Detroit 14th in WRC+ on their active roster. They are also 7th in strikeout percentage. So there are likely to be some Ks here for Lauer to pick up potentially. Moving over to the bats, starting on the Toronto side, going up against Olson. I am getting to them relatively heavily, which I don't think is too surprising given that it is a 4-game slate. Olson is getting some ownership, and I'm not playing too much Olson right now. That really does open the door for me to get to a decent amount of the Blue Jays bats. Not the best park for hitting home runs. It is a park downgrade in that regard. And again, I don't think Olson is a bad pitcher either. So far this season, Olson holding righties to a 117 expected ISO. Lefties have a 152 expected ISO. This is not me looking at this and saying, oh, I love the matchup against Reese Olson. It's more so it's a 4-game slate, and I'm not really getting to Olson. The Blue Jays do have good hitters in general. So 15% projected ownership, give or take, projected to Springer, Bichette, Barger, Guerrero, about 12% to Clement, and then everybody else projected sub 10%. For me, I'm getting to 35% George Springer at 4,700. I'm getting to 27% Bichette, 21% Barger. So I'm a little above the field there. And then I'm also getting to 15% Clement, 12% Guerrero, 14% Nathan Lucas, and then sub 10% of everybody else. So I'm not taking a huge stand on everybody on Toronto or anything like that, but I am over the field on Springer right now. I'm over the field on Bichette. I'm over on Barger. And Springer and Barger in particular, both have been very, very impressive this year. 4,700 for Springer, 4,300 for Barger, both reasonably priced. 285 expected ISO against right-handed pitching for Springer this season, 279 for Addison Barger. Bo Bichette, after a slow start, is up to a 188 expected ISO as well. He's 4,700. So those are the guys that I have the most exposure to. And then I'm pretty close to the field on the rest of the Jays bats. Again, when you look at the matchup with Olson, I think this is a spot where if you are going to target the Jays, you mostly just look to either the best overall hitters on Toronto or whatever your specific lineup needs, whatever position, whatever salary range, because Olson isn't somebody with drastic splits. He's better against righties, but he's not bad against lefties. He has similar strikeout percentages to both sides of the plate. So I don't think he's somebody that you can single out a platoon advantage. I think it's more so just saying, hey, I think these are the best hitters on the team, or these are the most reasonably priced, or these are the positions I need, and go to whatever fits the best from Toronto if you are going that route. For Detroit, on the other side, like I said, I am over the field on Lauer, but I am getting around the field on these Detroit bats as well. They still have a team total between 4.5 and 5. It's certainly not an easy spot. They are a good offense. Gleyber Torres getting 18% ownership. He is our highest projected Tiger. He is projected to be the highest owned Tiger. You're getting 10 to 15% ownership coming into Green, Torkelson, McKinstry, Wenceel, Perez. And I'm pretty similar on these guys. 21% Gleyber Torres for me, 15% Riley Green, 14% Jahmai Jones at 3,300. He does come with pitch hit risk, but he is likely to be hitting towards the top of the lineup. You can see here we have a massive pinch hit projection on him at 53%, but he's not getting too much ownership, and it is only a 4-game slate. So the opportunity cost is a little bit lower than when you talk about these platoon, high pinch hit probability guys on larger slates. So I don't mind getting the some Jones here just for the value and, hoping he gets it done in his first couple of at-bats. Torkelson showing up 13% for me, and then 7% or less, 6 to 7% on McKinstry, Perez, Baez, Dingler. So mostly in line with the field on the Tigers. Lauer has been impressive so far this season through his 42 innings pitched, but that's still 42 innings pitched. 157 expected ISO to righties, 164 to lefties. So expected power hasn't been non-existent. He has been mostly good at limiting that production. If you go back to the start of the 2022 season to try and get a larger sample size on Lauer, he does still have a higher strikeout percentage over that sample against righties than lefties, just shy of 25% K percentage since 2022 to right-handed hitters, 20% to lefties. He has given up more power and production to righties, though. 185 expected ISO to righties over that time, 133 to lefties. Again, I think you kind of view this as the fact that there's going to be a lot of righties in this lineup against Lauer. It doesn't necessarily lower his ceiling because he has shown the ability to strike out righties at a higher clip, both this season and long term, but it's not safe either. And you're not shying away from the best right-handed hitters in the lineup for the Tigers. Similarly, if you are stacking the Tigers, feel free to go to Riley Green. He doesn't come with pinch hit risk. Assuming he's getting the start against the lefty, Lauer's K rate against lefties is lower than against righties, although the production is lower as well. Green has not had much success against lefties, but if you go back to last year, he does have a 172 expected ISO, only a 288 expected WOBA. So clearly you prefer that Green would have the platoon advantage, but he does at least still have some power upside in this matchup. And then obviously if you're stacking the Tigers, your hope is that you're getting Eric Lauer early, you're getting runs on the board, and then you probably have the platoon advantage later in the game for Riley Green. So certainly somebody that you can include in your stacks as well. San Diego taking on the Cardinals in St. Louis. Sonny Gray pitching for the Cards in a tough strikeout matchup. Yu Darvish going for the Padres also in a tough strikeout matchup. So far against right-handed pitching this season, St. Louis ranks 27th in strikeout percentage. San Diego ranks 28th. The Cardinals have actually been the more productive offense. They're 8th in WRC+. San Diego coming in at 24th, which is a bit surprising given the talent that they have at the top of their lineup. But you are getting a down year from Luis Arraez, still not striking out at all, but also not doing much of anything in the way of productivity. And then the bottom of the order does drop off a bit as well. But middle of the order, obviously, still a tough spot for Sonny Gray, who has been good this year, but we have seen him start to drop off a little bit as well. Strikeout percentage this year is down from 30% to 27%. Stuff plus grade is comparable to last year. Command is still above average, though not as good as last year. 2.89 xFIP, still very good. 4.04 ERA, probably running a bit unlucky in terms of run prevention. So still, I think, a very good pitcher, just probably not as good as he has been in recent seasons. Getting about 39% ownership. I'm getting 34%. So I'm pretty much in line with the field on him. He does project behind Yusei Kikuchi for us. It is a tough strikeout matchup, as I mentioned. He has similar strikeout numbers to Kikuchi. Kikuchi is in a tough park, but does have a little bit better strikeout matchup against Seattle. So I think Gray looks fine here. On the other side, Darvish getting about 16 to 17% ownership. I'm only getting to about 5% right now at 7,500. And this is another case of, I think, simply the way we have Eric Lauer projected. And if ownership is going to be similar on Lauer, on Darvish, on Olsen, on a 4-game slate, that's going to be an edge that I'm likely to attack because there's not going to be that many spots that show up on a 4-game slate that project as advantageous things to try and exploit. And this is one. Again, that's going with the assumption that you're okay with, or you agree with, having Lauer projected above Darvish and above Olsen. And for what it's worth, in the lineups that I ran, I do have a little bit lower projection on Lauer than what's on the screen, but that does still put me ahead of some other projection sites, in line with others. So even with a slightly lower projection, he's showing up as somebody that I want to play a lot of. And again, that just has to do with the way those other pitchers are projected, both in terms of ownership and median projection. So if you're higher on Darvish or you're higher on Olsen, say you think they're similar to Lauer, then yeah, you're going to cut back Lauer a little bit. You're going to play a little bit more of those other guys. Similarly, if ownership were to change between now and lock and Eric Lauer gets a big bump and it cuts into Olsen and Darvish, then I'm going to tap into those guys a little bit more and be a little bit more willing to play them. But with the inputs that we have right now for the lineups that I ran for the show, basically what you have is player A is projected for 13 points, player B is projected for 11, player C is projected for 9. All three are projected to be rostered at a similar amount. I'm just going to click on player A a lot. And I'm perfectly fine with that approach. Obviously, it is risky because it's not a safe matchup for Lauer, and it's not like he's a proven great pitcher or anything like that. But he's also never been a bad pitcher, and it's not like the matchup is great for Darvish. It's not like the matchup is great for Reese Olson either, both clearly in below average strikeout matchups. Darvish so far this season also only 13 innings pitched, only striking out 13% of hitters. Granted, his velocity has still been there, 94.3 average fastball velocity. His stuff plus grade is at 98, which is down a couple points from last year, but nothing too crazy. What has really stood out so far is an inability to command the baseball for Yu Darvish. And that's something that certainly can come with rust. It is something that is pretty likely, I would think, to improve relatively soon as he just gets more innings, gets more comfortable back on the mound. But last year he had a 101 location plus grade. This year, through those first couple of starts, he's at 87.4, and his stuff just isn't good enough that if he's missing his spots, he's not throwing strikes, he's missing location in the strike zone, that he's going to get away with it. So that certainly hasn't been good to see. But, again, limited sample there. We have him projected for 3.6 strikeouts here. We have him projected to face 22 batters, give or take. So again, below average strikeout spot. We have him only projected for about a 16% strikeout percentage. Maybe you want to go a little bit higher than that. And again, if you do, then yeah, play him a little bit more. It can cut into Lauer a little bit. But I am fine with prioritizing Lauer over this range if ownership holds the way it looks right now. For the offenses here, San Diego does have the lowest team total on the slate against Sonny Gray. I think that makes sense given the ballpark and the fact that Sonny Gray is probably the most talented pitcher on the slate. Again, we have a higher projection on Kikuchi, but in terms of, just who do I think is the best at being a pitcher, it's probably Sonny Gray. So it does make sense that San Diego's team total is low. You're getting some ownership coming into Tatis at 20%. You're getting 23% coming into Manny Machado, 11% to Xander Bogaerts, sub 10% to everyone else. Mostly makes sense, I think, on a 4-game slate. Like, it doesn't really matter who you're facing. If there's only 8 offenses playing, getting to Manny Machado is going to be appealing. Getting to Fernando Tatis is going to be appealing. I'm pretty much in line with the field on Tatis, getting to 23%. I am below the field on Machado. I'm about half the field. I have 11% of him. Clearly, playing Manny Machado is fine. He's having another very good season. He's a very, very good hitter, but just not somebody that I'm getting much of here. Sonny Gray so far this season has allowed a 173 expected ISO to righties, 159 to lefties, so some power upside there, but not a ton. 25.5% K percentage to righties, 28.5% to lefties. If you are looking for a reason to play Machado, 384 expected WOBA, 224 expected ISO against right-handed pitching. Tatis has been even better, 410 expected WOBA, 261 expected ISO, and then some stolen base upside on top of that as well. Beyond that, I'm getting the 5% Bogaerts, sub 5% everybody else. Gavin Sheets has power. He has a 247 expected ISO against right-handed pitching this year. Notably, he has also only struck out 20% of the time. Sheets historically has been a pretty high K guy. So it is really interesting to see him sort of recreate himself as a low K guy while maintaining this power upside. That is something that is just pretty interesting in general and something to keep in mind. Arise, as usual, not hitting for any power this year, but also a 296 expected ISO. He's basically just been garbage, but continues to hit at the top of the order because his name is Luis Arise, I guess. Based on what they've done this year, Gavin Sheets should just be hitting at the top and Arise should be hitting like 8th, but they haven't gone that route. Bogart's only a 127 expected ISO. Merrill, again, does have power upside, 220 expected ISO, 145 actual. So you do get a nice gap there in actual power numbers versus expected for Merrill this year that you could look to attack just in general. Obviously not speaking to the matchup specifically against Gray because it is a tough one. But in general, as we continue to see Jackson Merrill come in at $4,400 or so, that is a spot that we can look to attack just from a talent standpoint. But for me, today, at least right now, it looks like pretty much getting to Tatis and then not getting to too much else from San Diego. On the other side for St. Louis, about a 4.5 total here as they come back home, no longer in Coors Field. Alec Burleson getting about 15% ownership. Arenado, Contreras, Herrera, all projected like 13 to 15% as well. Brendan Donovan getting 20%, leading the way. I have 18% Burleson. I have 10 to 12% Arenado, Donovan, Win. And then I'm at 9% Contreras, less than that of everybody else. So I am a bit below the field here on the cards, which does surprise me a little bit. When I think about this from like just how would I want to attack this strategically in my head? I don't love not having much of Darvish or the Cardinals because I think Darvish is very, very volatile here. And, as we talked about, we don't have a high projection on Darvish. His command has been an issue so far this season, but he's also 7,500. He is pretty cheap. And the Cardinals prices have already come back down from Coors Field. 4,500 for Herrera is the most expensive hitter. 4K for Brendan Donovan is the only other hitter in their projected lineup at 4K or higher. So it does strike me as a spot where you have a very volatile pitcher in Darvish, and then you have a cheap opposing offense that does have power upside and has been an above average offense this year in the Cards. There's a lot of ways that like one of those two sides does well. Historically, Darvish is a good strikeout pitcher. So it's kind of hard to see a lot of ways on a 4-game slate that like neither side of the Cardinals' cheap bats or inexpensive Yu Darvish do well. So I am a little disappointed that I'm not really getting to Darvish and I'm not really getting to the Cardinals. Not that I'm even like saying I think playing a lot of the Cardinals is the correct side. I'm more so saying like I think just having a lot of Darvish plus Cardinals collectively, however you want to split that up, whether it's a lot of Darvish, a lot of Cardinals, a good amount of both, whatever that would be, in my head, it makes a lot of sense, but it's not what's come out of my process. And, I've said it before, that's not something that I'm going to go in and manually change. I've spent a lot of time putting in place a process that I'm happy with. So once in a while, it will give me something that I don't really agree with in my head, but I spent enough time on it that I trust it. But this is a spot that, to me, just, as a DFS player and the way that I would think about approaching this slate, I actually think it's a really interesting one to, in whatever way you want to do it, have a lot of exposure to this game because of the pricing combined with the theoretical strikeout upside that Yu Darvish has, even though we haven't seen it in a limited sample this year, but also the power upside and value that the Cards have. So I'm not getting a lot of this game, and I am a little disappointed about that. Maybe it will change between now and lock. A's taking on the Astros in Houston. For the A's, it is Luis Severino. For the Astros, it is Jason Alexander. I need to pull up Jason Alexander's stats from this season because I forgot to do that before the show. Severino, outside of Oakland or Sacramento, that's been a plus for him all year. Middle of the road matchup against Houston. They rank 13th in WRC plus so far this season against right-handed pitching. They rank 21st in strikeout percentage. Severino overall this season, so not talking home road splits. Overall this season, only striking out 16% of hitters, which is down from last year, but his stuff has still graded out very well. 107.7 stuff plus grade is basically the same as last year. His command has actually been slightly better than last year. His fastball velo still averaging 96 miles an hour, about the same as last year. So I do think it's likely that, maybe you can just buy into these home road splits a little bit. He has openly talked about hating pitching in Sacramento. And it is likely you see that strikeout percentage increase from 26%, at least a bit. He struck out 21% of hitters last year with very similar numbers across the board. For Jason Alexander on the other side, he has made 7 starts, 8 total appearances at AAA this season, 42 2/3 innings pitched. He has struck out 20.1% of the hitters that he has faced. He has 86 2/3 innings pitched in his major league career, 24 total appearances, 12 total starts, only a 14.5% strikeout percentage in those appearances. Projects for like a 16-ish percent strikeout percentage going forward this season. Right now, projected for like 15 to 16% ownership at $7,800. Surprises me a little bit, but I'm getting 4%. So again, with the way ownership is projecting right now, Alexander's just kind of in that bucket where it's like, okay, if people are just going to treat him the exact same as Eric Lauer, I'm going to keep clicking Eric Lauer. But, again, this will be something that I'm paying attention to later on in the day. Ownership projections tend to get better as the day goes on. Sites, in the industry sites in general, don't put a lot of stock or weight into them. Not that they're very good in general anyway. I'm talking about my own ownership projections now, but they are based on, what sites are projecting, and projections in general get better as the day goes on. So wouldn't be surprised, especially, I've mentioned it on shows before. A lot of times when I am very heavy on somebody on my show, by the time we get to lock, either their ownership has come up or I just end up being wrong on ownership and it comes in higher. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if by the time we get to lock, you are talking about like Eric Lauer, 30%, and then like 10% projected to, Darvish, and 15 to Olsen and 5 to Alexander, something like that. But for right now, with the way it's projected, Lauer is just the guy I want out of that group. Severino, I do think, is likely to get steamed a little bit from an ownership standpoint. I'm seeing him projected in like the 20 to 25% range a lot of places this morning. And again, that could change, but I have him coming in at 32%. He is really cheap at 6K. He's the cheapest pitcher that, you would probably want to play on this slate. I think he might be the cheapest pitcher, period. So he's coming in at 6K. Like, that's just a really cheap price tag for somebody that projects as a good point per dollar play anywhere you look. He's projected above Darvish in very popular projection systems that people use. He's projected above Lauer in one of them. He's projected above Olsen in them. Like, I think you're going to get steam coming into Severino, especially if he does continue to be projected, only in that like 20 to 25% range, because then you're going to get him looking good in Sims as well. And that's going to push up ownership. So I do think he's a good value play. And, you can see that on the screen. We have him projected around 13 DraftKings points. We have him over 2 points per $1,000, good point per dollar projection. But I do think you see ownership here. I'm getting 16%. He's projected by me for 32%. So I'm getting around half the field on Severino, just because, again, he is really volatile. I understand why the ownership is there because he is cheap, but I can also, find some cheap bats. It's not really difficult on this slate. So I'm getting some Severino, but I am about half the field there. For the bats, starting on the A's side, I'm getting to a lot of Nick Kurtz here, which I like a lot. He has been fantastic. First round pick last year out of Wake Forest, and he has not struggled at all in the major leagues. He hits for a ton of power. He's still relatively, affordably priced at $4,900. It's not like we have the salaries coming up, but it's not like it's, gotten too out of hand. He has a 364 expected ISO and a 434 expected WOBA. I said that really weird, but a 434 expected WOBA in 189 plate appearances against right-handed pitching so far this season. Very limited sample for Alexander so far this year. Didn't pitch in the majors in 2023 or 2024. If you go back to 2022, sample gets a little bit bigger. 237 expected ISO to left-handed hitters since 2022. That's kind of all that we can get on Jason Alexander. But, he doesn't project as a great major league pitcher. Probably has made some improvements since 2022, but maybe not. But either way, Nick Kurtz has certainly done damage against pitchers better than Jason Alexander this year. He's projected for 19% ownership. I have 44% right now. I absolutely love getting to Nick Kurtz here. Lawrence Butler, Brent Rooker, Langoliers, Wilson, these guys all projected in the like 12 to 18% ownership range. I'm getting to 33% Butler. That puts me about 2x the field. Only 4,300, has some power upside. 163 expected ISO against right-handed pitching this year, facing a guy that isn't going to miss a lot of bats, but also has, big-time stolen base upside as well. So that, obviously adds to his upside, adds to his projection. You can see over here we have a pretty reasonable 0.17 stolen base projection on him. I've mentioned it on shows in the past, but I actually like when I'm over the field on somebody like Butler, I like seeing that we actually have a modest stolen base projection. Like, I'm always a little bit nervous if it's just like, oh, I'm jamming this stolen base guy and we haven't projected to steal half of a base today, because that's a really high stolen base projection. And then you get into like well, would I be playing this much of him if we were at 0.3 or something? When seeing somebody like Lawrence Butler at 0.17 and knowing that I'm still getting 2x the field, I do like to see that just because I think it makes the projection a little bit less risky, volatile, lack of a better word. I think you can kind of just trust it a little bit more. And so I do like getting the Butler here. I'm getting 19% Rooker, which is right in line with the field. I'm at 17% apiece on Langoliers and Wilson. Puts me a little bit over the field on them. Jacob Wilson, obviously very good at putting the ball in play. He's still cheap. Doesn't give you a lot of power upside. Langoliers does give you power upside at 4K. I used to say that he was arguably the best power hitting catcher in baseball. That is certainly obviously not the case anymore. But non-Cal Raleigh division, he's up there. 182 expected ISO against right-handed pitching so far this season for Langoliers, 210 if you go back to last year. Tyler Soderstrom getting 10% ownership. I'm at 7. Certainly wouldn't mind getting a bit more of him. He gives you power upside from the left side as well. 236 expected ISO. But between him and Kurtz, I do prefer Kurtz, even though he's a little bit more expensive. They are different positions now, though. Kurtz at first base, Soderstrom in the outfield. I prefer Kurtz, but obviously Soderstrom would be fine as well. But I am over the field right now on Kurtz, Butler, Langoliers, Wilson, in line with the field on Rooker, getting a good amount of the A's. On the other side for Houston, this is a spot where I am getting to them quite a bit, and I figured I would be when I'm half the field on $6,000 Severino. There's a lot of volatility with Severino, and again, he has been better outside of Sacramento. His stuff has still graded out well so far this year. The Astros offense is fine, but it's certainly not one that, you're super excited to be getting to a lot of these guys. But you are in a park that plays up right-handed power with the Crawford boxes in left. You do have negative correlation against what I think is going to be a 30+% owned Severino. And you don't have a lot of ownership coming into different parts of this lineup. Now, maybe that changes. Again, that does tend to happen when I'm getting to a lot of something early on in the day, is by the time we get to lock, that ownership has just doubled or tripled or whatever. But right now, 22% projected ownership coming into Altuve, 11 to 12% coming into Diaz, Walker, and Caratini, and Cam Smith. Everybody else sub 10%. So right now, I'm getting to 35% Diaz as a $3,400 catcher. I'm getting to 32% Mauricio Dubon as a $3,300 third baseman / shortstop. Bryce Matthews showing up 30% for me. Only 5% projected ownership. Again, probably comes in at like 10%, but still looks like a good value at 3,100. I'm getting to 30% Altuve, 19% Walker, 15 on Smith, 13 on Trammell, 7 on Caratini, a little bit of McCormick. But overall, getting to a lot of Houston here, looking to leverage against Severino. Maybe that's why I don't have more St. Louis, is just the fact that I do have so much of the Astros. They're in that similar price range, except even a little bit cheaper. So that could be, part of it. Maybe that balances out a little bit for me. Probably will if Houston ownership comes up. Like if, Matthews does end up being projected for like 10 to 12% and all of these guys come up, let's say, you like 2x or 1.5x their ownership projections, maybe I do come down a little bit on them, and then that trickles over to St. Louis. That would make a lot of sense if that ends up happening. I've mentioned the Severino splits so far, a couple of times, but so far this season, 360 WOBA in 66 innings pitched at home this year, only 280 in 52 innings pitched on the road. He has a 17.9% strikeout percentage at home, 13.2% on the road. So that is surprising. And then his xFIP is actually higher on the road than at home. 4.37 xFIP at home, 5.09 on the road. FIP is basically the same. So probably not, at least from what we've seen so far. Like there might be something to the splits, especially because we know he does not like pitching there. And obviously it is a tough place to pitch. So you would expect pitchers generally to do worse there than a lot of other parks. But also something that maybe is being a little bit overstated as well on the back of him probably running a little bit hot in terms of limiting WOBA on the road compared to at home. BABIP, road versus home, 349 at home, 226 on the road. So certainly running really, really hot on balls in play on the road compared to at home. So you do probably see things kind of balance out a little bit more compared to where they are now. Another reason to certainly not shy away from the Astros here. And again, a 4.5, 4.6 team total for Houston. Right now, we don't have any teams above 5. Basically, every team is like 4.5 to 5, other than the Padres are around 4. So all of these offenses look very, very similar in terms of range of outcomes. And it does make me, mostly if like one team is just not going to get a lot of ownership and they're going to be inexpensive, I'm probably just going to play a lot of them. Seattle taking on Yusei Kikuchi in Anaheim. Logan Evans is going for the Mariners. Kikuchi is likely to be the highest owned pitcher on the slate. He is the highest projected pitcher on the slate at 8,300. We have a very high projection on him. I lowered it a little bit when I ran my stuff, but still have him as the highest projected pitcher and still got plenty of him. Very good strikeout pitcher. We have seen the strikeout numbers bounce back after a very slow start to the season. He's up to a 24.5% strikeout percentage this year. He was at 28% last year. Stuff plus is down from last year. Command is down a bit as well, but has still been above average. And you're getting this Angels team that does have power. They are getting a positive park shift, playing in Anaheim instead of in Seattle, against left-handed pitching since the start of last season. They are 8th in strikeout percentage on their active roster. They are also 7th in WRC+. They have plenty of power. They're 7th in ISO, despite playing roughly half their games in Seattle over that time. So very boom or bust spot here, but there's not a lot to like. There's no safety in pitching today. There's no pitching spot that I think you can point to and say like, oh yeah, I love this spot. I'd be surprised if it goes poorly. It doesn't exist. Sonny Gray's got a horrible strikeout matchup and still has to face Tatis, Machado, Merrill, Sheets. There's nothing you can point to and feel great about here. So I'm expecting around 50% ownership to Kikuchi. I still got to about 75% right now. Again, maybe comes down a little bit, but I haven't projected as the highest, or we haven't projected as the highest pitcher on the slate and highest projected pitcher on the slate. And I'm fine getting to him at 8,300. Looks like a pretty good value play. He's in that same price range with these other pitchers. So that's something else is like, yeah, he's getting the most ownership. But when you look at the gap in projection for Kikuchi versus Darvish, Olsen, whoever else I'm blanking, Alexander, if they really are going to get 15 to 20% ownership, yeah, I'm willing to pay 2.5 times the ownership for Kikuchi, just given how much better he looks than those guys. Obviously, when you talk median projections in baseball, the standard deviations are still big. There's a lot of volatility, but they still matter in the sense of, generally you're going to have similar standard deviations on pitchers. High K guys, it's going to be a little bit higher than others. But when you get a 5, 6, 7 point gap in median projection, even though there is still a lot of volatility, there is still a big difference between those pitchers. So that's something else where, like, let's say the ownership comes down on Olsen to 10% and Alexander to 5% and Darvish to 10%, while Kikuchi goes to 70%, then yeah, maybe I come in at like 55% Kikuchi and turn that into some Olsen and turn that into some Darvish or something. But with the way everything's projected right now, I just am happy getting to Kikuchi. I'm happy getting to Lauer. Hopefully they both have good games. Logan Evans on the other side, getting about 12% ownership at 7K. I have 15%, so I'm slightly above the field here. He is 7K, so he's a little bit cheaper than most of those other guys. He's still $1,000 more than Severino, so not as good a point per dollar projection. But you do have a very good strikeout matchup for him here. Park downgrade as well, obviously. But a 25% strikeout percentage for the Angels is the second highest in baseball against right-handed pitching this season. It is the highest other than Colorado, who, again, just isn't a real Major League Baseball team. So I don't mind mixing in some relatively low-owned Evans, just hoping you get strikeouts against the Angels. He's not a good strikeout pitcher on his own. Only a 19% K percentage against righties this year, 15% against lefties. Will be facing a predominantly right-handed lineup. He has allowed power to both sides, 200 expected ISO to righties, 206 to lefties. But again, I'm not getting a ton, but it is a way you can be different. It's not like he is drastically worse than whatever other pitcher you were going to play. Kikuchi this season against right-handed hitters striking out 23%, against lefties striking out 30%. Most of the power allowed has come to righties, 209 expected ISO to right-handed hitters, only 109 to left-handed hitters. Seattle's projected lineup is likely to be almost entirely right-handed. Rodriguez, Raleigh, Arozarena, Solano, Garver, Moore, Williamson, all from the right side. So again, very dangerous matchup for Kikuchi. And that is something actually I want to check just because our projection is so high on him. It is possible that maybe we have more lefties in our projected lineup. No, still only the two righties, or the two lefties rather. So we just have a very high projection here on Kikuchi, which again, I don't completely disagree with. I'm just a little bit lower. But by a little bit, I mean like about 17 and a half, I think. So I do think Kikuchi is the best pitching play on the slate. Obviously, still comes with risk in this park against this lineup. For the offenses, 20% ownership coming into Julio Rodriguez, 24% coming in to Cal Raleigh. Those are the two highest, followed by 18% for Arozarena, 12% for Crawford, sub 10% everywhere else. I have 18% Rodriguez, about 10% Raleigh, sub 10% everywhere else. So this is not a spot where, at least right now, I am getting to too much of the other side against Kikuchi. I wouldn't mind it if I was, because you are getting that park upgrade. You are getting a lineup that has power. You are getting negative correlation. But for right now, there are just other spots that I'm prioritizing. Rodriguez is relatively expensive at 4,800 and already relatively popular. Same for Raleigh at 6K, although obviously he has completely earned it. Arozarena, reasonably priced at 4,500. On the other side, for the Angels, I am not getting as much of them as I thought I would, just given the power upside here and the fact that most of their lineup is pretty cheap. 25% ownership coming into Zach Neto. He's the highest owned guy. He is also my highest owned guy. I have 19%. You are getting about 15% to Adele and Moncada. You're getting about 20% to Trout, 15% to Ward, 10% apiece to Shanuel and Ohapi. So 10 to 20% ownership, give or take, on most of the Angels bats. And again, it is a good power spot. I mentioned the power numbers allowed by Evans, and then you're getting that park downgrade. 206 expected ISO to lefties, 200 to righties. There is plenty of power in this Angels lineup. Evans also doesn't get a lot of strikeouts, which is nice when you're talking about an offense that has a lot of power, but also a lot of swing and miss. 228 expected ISO against righties for Neto this year, 291 for Trout, 216 for Ward, 293 for Adele, 278 for Moncada, 211 for Ohapi. There's a ton of power upside here. I wish I were getting more of the Angels than I am, but I'm getting like 10 to 15% of most of them, right around 20% of Neto. But if you wanted to play more, I certainly would think that that is fine. So to quickly recap the slate, I'll put the highest projected players on the screen, and then I'll talk about my highest owned players right now. So you can see the highest projected pitchers on the screen. My highest owned pitchers right now are Kikuchi, Lauer, and Gray. So same as those on the screen. I do have a little bit more Lauer than Gray, though. Highest owned catchers for me: Yainer Diaz, Shea Langoliers, and Logan Ohapi. At first base, I'm getting to Nick Kurtz, Christian Walker, Spencer Torkelson, and then Vlad Guerrero is right behind Torkelson. At second base, getting to Bryce Matthews, Gleyber Torres, and Jose Altuve. At third base, I am getting to Mauricio Dubon, Addison Barger, and Nolan Arenado. Shortstop, getting to Bo Bichette, Zach Neto, and Jacob Wilson. And then in the outfield, I'm getting to George Springer, Lawrence Butler, Fernando Tatis, Brent Rooker, Alec Burleson, Julio Rodriguez as my highest owned outfielders. My most used stacks overall: Houston, Athletics, Toronto. My most used five-mans: Toronto, Athletics, and Houston. My home run pick is Nick Kurtz. That's all I have for you today. Thank you for checking out the show. Good luck on your lineups tonight. Good luck on Showdown if you're playing that. That starts in about 25 minutes. Don't forget to sign up using the link in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the thumbs up button, all of that. I'll see you back here again tomorrow for tomorrow's 13 game.